Broadcasting all over the world at urbanbroadcastmedia.com, delivering love and inspiration 24/7. This is UBM Praise. The following show is paid programming and does not necessarily express the views and opinions of Urban Broadcast Media and its subsidiaries. Thank you for listening to UBM Praise.
UBM Praise proudly presents Warriors Talk.
You have just tuned in to Warriors Talk with your host, Lady Rizal. Warriors Talk is a platform to address how cancer, as well as other diseases, are running rampant throughout our country, and how we can move away from awareness to taking action. Warriors Talk will empower listeners by keeping them informed, connected to services, and encourage them to thrive while surviving.
I'm a survivor. I'm not gonna give up. I'm not gonna stop. I'm gonna work harder. I'm a survivor. I'm gonna make it. I'm a survivor. Keep on surviving. I'm a survivor. I'm not gonna give up. I'm not gonna stop. I'm gonna work harder. I'm a survivor. I'm gonna make it. I'm a survivor. Keep on surviving.
Welcome to Warriors Talk. I am Lady Rizal. And today we're having co-hosting with us Rizal Gilmore, a.k.a. Biz. And we are excited that you have chosen to tune in today. It is Testimonial Tuesday, and we are inviting everyone to join us on all forms of social media. Facebook /Warriors Talk with an S. Twitter at Warriors Talk 1. Instagram Warriors Talk 1. Periscope at Lady Rizal. And for a rebroadcast of the show, you can go to Spreaker.com. That's Spreaker.com. Make sure you follow me, and I will follow you back. You can also call in at 773-675-5906, and we would love to hear from you. This show is dedicated to all the medical teams that take care of those with a cancer diagnosis. From the doctors, the nurses, the receptionists, the radiologists, the chemo nurses, everyone that plays a role in assisting you when you go to your doctor's appointments. Our previous show, we spoke with Shanette Johnson, who admitted to being a longtime smoker, and she was diagnosed with lung cancer, and she decided to take her life into her own hands and fight with the help of her family and friends. And she encourages anyone who is currently smoking to please consider quitting today. Our healing scripture is coming from Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not to thy own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path. And going through a cancer diagnosis, we know that there's going to be some times we're not going to understand everything that we're going through. And that is our time to lean on God. When we have important questions and decisions, we know that sometimes we can't even trust ourselves, but we know that we can trust God. But God knows what's best for us, and he knows because he's a better judger of ourselves than we are. So we can trust him, and we can also stop thinking that we can't trust our own reasonable thinking. Sometimes we don't even trust ourselves, but we know that we are to bring our decisions to God in prayer, use our Bible as a guide, and follow God's leading, and he will direct our path, both guiding and protecting us. And what we're going to do is talk about our battle of the day, which is rediscovering intimacy during and after a cancer diagnosis. And co-hosting with me is Rizal Gilmore. Rizal, are you on the line?
I'm here.
Okay, I couldn't hear you at first. I wasn't sure if you were on. Okay.
Good evening, everyone.
So what we're going to do, Rizal, is we're going to go ahead and play our clip. And it's going to talk about rediscovering intimacy during and after a cancer diagnosis. But I know that you have experience in this area dealing with your wife's diagnosis. Just learning how to reconnect with the intimacy can sometimes be a challenge for you and the spouse that you're with.
That is correct. Going through what I went through, there were definitely some changes that took place. For some reason, I feel as though once my wife found out that she had breast cancer, she felt as though she wasn't pretty enough anymore, and that wasn't the case. You know, I felt as though there was a low self-esteem started to come over her. But me encouraging her and continuing our marriage the way that we did was showing her that it's okay. You know, I understand what you're going through, and we're still going to do what we need to do to make it happen.
And sometimes that's what it takes. It takes both people agreeing on we're gonna do this, and we're not gonna let this overtake us. So it's a good thing that you have someone there. And I always encourage a support system. It's very important that you have someone there with you that's going to be able to help you fight this battle, because this is one battle that you cannot fight alone.
Definitely not. And I hear it so many different times. Well, let's understand, cancer is not a transmitted disease. You're not going to catch anything. The big C is just the big C. Everything is going to be okay. Everything still functions and works the same. So there's really no problem. Maybe later on down the line, there's some things that might happen within the intimacy, but everything was fine, really, you know. And we love, actually, I think it drew us closer to each other during that time.
Well, I'm glad you brought that out, that cancer is not contagious, because I think that there's a lot of misconceptions about cancer. So that was a very important piece that you brought out. So we're going to go ahead and play the clip so that we can get a better understanding of rediscovering intimacy during and after a cancer diagnosis.
My name is Glenn Frost, and I'm a medical social worker at Roswell Park Cancer Institute. And a large part of my day is working with couples and assessing and working with them in terms of any intimacy concerns that they might have that have been brought on by either their cancer diagnosis or perhaps even their treatment or any post-surgical issues that are getting in the way of intimacy for them. One of the places where we start is really defining intimacy for couples. And I often will begin by asking couples when they have been intimate last, and they will sort of sheepishly reply, maybe in the last week or so, something like that. And I comment to them that I'm assuming you're referring to physical intimacy, to which they reply back to me, well, yes, isn't that what you asked? And I say no. And then we start the discussion of other aspects of intimacy. For many types of cancers, the treatment itself can have many side effects that can really impact the level of intimacy that couples choose to have. And whether that's side effects from radiation or chemotherapy, maybe nausea, issues like that, or maybe real physical issues that are impacting, whether it's the result of a surgery, maybe it's a body-altering surgery that people have had. There are specific therapeutic interventions we can work with couples on in terms of specific physical intimacy. There are other techniques that we can work with couples on in terms of maybe not as specific physical intimacy, but some issues that are getting in the way of physical intimacy. What I find a lot working with couples is that the level of emotional intimacy can really be impacted by this diagnosis of cancer or by some of the treatments. And a lot of what I recommend is, it sounds maybe corny or cliched, but taking a trip down memory lane. And we talk about, getting out the old photo albums, getting out the old home movies, getting out the wedding album, getting out maybe the cards or letters that you used to send to each other, and getting back in touch with those other levels of intimacy that you had, that drew you together as a couple. And it's not just reminiscing about them, but recreating them. So remembering that we used to go on long walks and then going on a long walk. Remembering that sometimes we would just get in the car and drive for hours. Get in the car and drive for hours. Remembering those conversations you had, late into the night, and having those conversations, and that can be a real moment of intimacy. And in some ways, having a deep, meaningful conversation with your partner, in some ways can be even more intimate than a physical intimacy. This can potentially be an opportunity to really develop a level of intimacy that you may not have had before. So again, just contact your psychosocial oncology department, talk to your doctor, talk to the clinic, and certainly they can refer you directly to us.
So this clip is basically tapping into other levels of intimacy. But first, we need to define what intimacy is. So intimacy is a state marked by emotional closeness, a quality suggested closeness or warmth, something that is very personal or private. Intimacy is a process, not a thing. It takes place over time and is not stagnant. In fact, any kind of stagnation in a relationship kills intimacy. Intimacy can also take many forms and look different for individuals or couples.
Yes, you are absolutely right. And before we get started, I'd just like to give a shout out to Regina Spencer in Edgewood, Maryland, who's listening out there, who's one of our guests. I just want to say hi to her and keep up the fight with her cancer.
Amen. Shouts out to the warriors.
So this, if you would have asked me that question years ago about intimacy, I probably wouldn't have had a correct answer. But listening to you explain it, I can now think back and think of all of those key words and things that you just said and how they played. One thing I learned from an experience from a young lady, she told me that she deals with stage 1 cancer, and she's been fighting it. She doesn't have anyone, and she started getting closer to a young man who didn't know her situation. But as they began to get closer, she started to share her story. And as she noticed, the phone calls started getting less.
Yep.
The time spent started getting less.
Yep.
And it's like, what's going on here?
Exactly.
And eventually they stopped speaking. And that left her in such an emotional state that she just felt as though it was hard to be loved by someone again. And I can feel that. I can get that. Because when you don't have anyone, it's hard to deal or fight anything what's going on in your life.
That's true.
You definitely need that support system. And I know women are emotional creatures. Men love the fact that they're loved, and women just want their emotions to just run wild. So I can relate to how she's feeling and what she's going through, and it's not the end of the world. And I don't understand why, and I'm going to have to, yes, us men, once we find out that something, is going on with somebody, that we don't step up to the plate and help them through it. I mean, if we were friends before, we definitely should be friends afterwards.
You know what? I've come to realize that men and women are different, and we process things different. Men are, by nature, y'all are fighters. So, and y'all are fixers. So when something is happening, when your woman comes to you and she says something is happening, you go into fixer mode. So you right away, you want to know how to fix this problem. Women, we are nurturers. So when you tell us something is wrong, we want to nurture you. So it's really funny that way. If a man figure out he can't fix it, I think then at that point he kind of withdraws from the problem because he feel like, well, I'm no good to her because I can't do anything for her. I can't fix this problem.
Yeah. I mean, it's a problem that he can't fix, but, it's not his fault either. But I think if you're in a friendship, relationship, marriage, some of the vows are through thick and thin, for better or for worse. You have to stick around. I know some men who left their marriage after their wife started going through chemotherapy because they weren't able to perform or there was lack of, and they started to step out on their marriage or relationship or whatever the case. And that's just not the answer. That's at that point in time is when your spouse, your wife, or whoever, that's when they need you the most. That's when things are supposed to come together instead of falling apart.
That's true. I think that's why it's important to get to know the person that you with. And with intimacy, that takes time. A lot of people, they want to rush it. I mean, normally we rush it. We go right to the sexual intimacy first without really getting to know that person in all the other areas. I mean, it may be a person that you may not like, but you done already crossed that barrier. And now you got to figure out either how to escape like he did or how to make this thing